The Book of Susanna, an analysis. So, we've just completed reading the Book of Susanna, and it is quite an interesting story. It's very interesting how she's another heroine from biblical times, but she's obviously not talked about as much as other heroines such as Esther, because she's here mentioned in the Apocrypha, and she's probably more commonly talked about in the Jewish faith and everything, but in the Christian faith, she's definitely not discussed very commonly, and she's not mentioned in the Christian Bible as far as we know. But this story deals with a lot of different themes here, and it discusses seeking out the truth, people bearing false witness against another person, people, and in addition to bearing false witness, they're putting their sin onto another person who did not commit a sin. It was just a person who was kind of the victim of their lustful desire, And in addition to committing false witness, they're being lustful, lustful and what's the word? They're also coveting another man's wife, and there's a lot of strong themes in this book. And Susanna, throughout this story, she kept her faith in the Lord, despite almost being raped, despite being propositioned by two men who are supposed to be respected men, it's very interesting that as old as time, this has been an issue that women had to deal with, and these are supposed to be respected elders who people look to for advice, and they just couldn't control their desires, so they go to Susanna one day. They have the nerve to hide in Susanna's house in her garden, and then demand that she sleep with them, or they'll take what they want, and when she denies and everything, they get mad at her about it, and then they say, oh, we'll say that you've been with a young boy, and we'll we'll say that he got away, and then they'll put you to death for that, which is that's some pretty harsh punishment. But this was during a time during the law of Moses, where adultery is a capital offense, so she keeps her faith in the Lord, knowing that the Lord will bring her through, and she pleads her cause, even when they've handed down the judgment for her to be put to death, despite, I don't even know if they heard her side. They just took the words of the elders, She pleads to the Lord, and then we see that Daniel here he makes an appearance, and he stands up for her. He says, how are you going to put this woman to death? These men have bore false witness against her. And then because Daniel spoke up and everything, the people allow him to question the witnesses. And when Daniel splits them up, he sees that there's, their stories don't make sense. Their stories don't add up, which they should have just asked in the first place, right? But anywho, so we can apply this story to a lot of different things that goes on in our daily life, such as being falsely accused of something you would never do. And then when the whole crowd turns against you and says that, yes, you are guilty of this thing that you would never do, you have to keep faith in the Lord, that the Lord will see you through, and will prove you to be the innocent and truthful one, And I know it's not always easy to feel that way. I've experienced that. I'm dealing with that. I deal with that, But have faith in the Lord, because He's your Heavenly Father, He knows what's best for you, and He's seen everything from the beginning all the way through. He knows. So, yeah, a very fascinating story, and there's much to take from this story, you can keep coming back to this story and you can probably find new angles to talk from. But a very important angle is keeping faith in the Lord and knowing that He'll bring you through. Thank you.